Hey, this is Teresa Matsura, and you're listening to Uncanny Japan. It's going to be Setsubun soon, February 3rd. Remember the time of year the Oni wait in their caves until dark, sharpening their claws and fangs, perhaps even the horns on their heads. They oil up their muscles, then use those same oiled hands to further muss up their head of wild, tangled hair. Next, they tie on their favorite tiger skin loincloth and fasten studded or spiked iron bands around their ankles and wrists. Then, once all the light has faded from the sky, they creep from their caves and descend into towns and cities throughout Japan, where they rampaged through the streets, growling and roaring and beating on doors with their iron clubs. Occasionally, they'll snatch away some unsuspecting child, especially the bad ones. If you're prepared, though, with some roasted soybeans, or maybe you've nailed a sardine head skewered on a holly branch to your front door, they hate that, then you should be safe. You can pelt them with beans and shout "Oni wa soto, fuku wa uchi," out with the Oni, in with good luck, and they'll cut and run. It makes for a very exciting night. Seriously though, what is not to love about Oni? And I'm not being sarcastic either. I've had several patrons and listeners ask for an episode on these lovable, fear-inducing brutes, but it's taken me a long while to do so. I'm quite intimidated, to tell you the truth. Oni lore is so incredibly deep and rich and varied that I literally do not know where to start. And you say start at the beginning, but that's kind of the most overwhelming part. The more I read about where they come from, the more different stories I run across. Oni are just that fascinating. Everyone wants to study them. So today let's wade in and see what we come up with. Would you like to explore the stranger, more obscure corners of Japanese culture? Dig a little deeper into superstitions, curious customs, and all those mysterious creatures that inhabit the land? If so, then this is the podcast for you. Uncanny Japan is where I, author Teresa Matsura, share all the fascinating tidbits I unearth while doing research for my writing. From the bizarre to the ghastly, and everything in between. I hope you enjoy the show. Oni. They're everywhere, and they've been everywhere for a long time. When you look up the origin story, you can find that there isn't just one. Very smart, well-educated people have a lot of different theories. I highly recommend reading anything by Noriko T. Reader. That's R-E-I-D-E-R. She has researched and written extensively about the bad boys. Her book, Japanese Demon Lore, Oni from Ancient Times to the Present, for example, is a wealth of information. She believes that there are 4 lines from which the Oni have traveled: the Japanese, the Chinese, the Buddhist, and the Onmyodo, or the way of yin and yang. Very briefly, let's look into each of them. Oni originating in Japan, number 1. Well, that makes sense. It also makes sense that in an attempt to understand terrifying natural events like thunder and lightning, violent storms and earthquakes, early Japanese people would ascribe some otherworldly explanation. Let's say a god or an early version of an Oni. You can also find the Oni in Japan's creation myth in the Kojiki, 712. The female creator of Japan, Izanami, dies after giving birth to the fire god, and she goes to the Yomi, the land of the dead. Her grief-stricken twin brother husband, Izanagi, goes after her. It's dark down there, but he does find her. Unfortunately, much like Persephone and her pomegranate seeds, Izanami explains to him that she has already had a bite to eat and she must remain there. "Please, just go. Don't look back. Just go," she says. But Izanagi has none of that. He lights a fire and he sets his eyes upon his dead wife, who is actually a rotting corpse, maggots and all. This causes Izanami much shame. Also, she's livid. Born of different body parts, she sends the gods of thunder, big oni-looking beasts, as well as the Yomotsu Shikomi, either 1 or 8 depending on what you read, female oni hags, after him. So there's proof Japan had its own brand of oni way back in at least the 700s. We all know that China influenced Japan quite a bit back in the day. The character used now for oni, of course, is of Chinese origin. In China, it means invisible soul or spirits of the dead, both evil and ancestral. But there are some who think that the pronunciation came from a different character, on, which means to hide behind something, not wishing to be seen. Shall we move on to number 3, the Buddhist origin of oni? Some scholars believe that all oni are wholly from the Buddhist tradition. I mean, what is a Buddhist hell if you don't have a plethora of oni slicing you to pieces with long blades, pouring boiling iron all over you, or stirring you into a pot of pus and blood? I mean, come on. I have a question for you. What did your mother tell you when you told a lie? Well, some children in Japan are told that if they tell a lie, an oni will come and pull out their tongue with a pair of pliers, or some such device. I've been to several temples where there actually are fierce oni statues and pairs of pliers on display. So Mom's got proof here. Lastly, the Om-myodo beginnings. Basically, Om-myodo is an eclectic practice that I really need to study more. Think astrology and the 5 elements, mixed with a good dose of yin and yang and magic. Long story short, some powerful Om-myodo masters were thought to be able to create oni. Okay, I'm going to stop there because I also have a book in Japanese that talks about different oni categorizations. It says that there are the natural ones, the ones born from rebellions, and others that come about from art. So just understand that it's a deep, deep topic, and most everyone recognizes that there are different origins, but that over time, there is also lots of overlap and even contradiction. Oni are very complicated beasts. Hey, did you know they're cannibals too? They love to eat, and they love to eat people. There's an actual phrase called one gulp or bite from an oni. Basically, that an oni can swallow you up in one bite. In the tale Ise Monogatari, a dude who was in love with a high-classed woman, but because of their different statuses, they couldn't marry. So one night, he steals her away. While they were fleeing, it started to storm. He found a kura storehouse that wasn't locked, so he put her inside. Not sure why he didn't go in himself, but he didn't. I don't know, after kidnapping this woman, he decides now to be a gentleman. Anyway, there is lots of thunder and lightning all night long. Next morning, he opens the door, and she's nowhere to be found. Evidently, an oni had eaten her up in one bite, and her screams weren't heard because of the storm. I have a couple follow-up questions about this story, but I don't know who to ask. Where did the oni go? Hey, did you know that oni can transform? They can. They can turn into very good-looking humans, to play tricks, and to get a good meal. True story. Way back in the day, children born with teeth were thought to be the children of oni, and you don't want to know what happened to them. Oh, speaking of giving birth to an oni child, if you're a kid in Japan and you're acting really obnoxious, your parents might look down at you and say, "Oya ni ninu ko wa onigo." A child who doesn't resemble or act like its parents is the child of an oni. You won't be taken out and killed, though, just shamed. Oh, and thanks to my patron Michael, I found that there is something clever and fun that the Japanese language did to the word vampire. I can't find any reference to a Western-style vampire in old Japan. Pretty much the Oni did all the blood-sucking. So instead of wrestling with that nasty V sound, which isn't found in Japanese, or using katakana to import the word, someone came along and assigned Japanese characters to the word vampire. The three kanji are kyuketsuki, blood-sucking Oni. There are just so many different types of Oni, as well as famous and infamous ones. I haven't even scratched the surface. There's Shuten Doji, who was an Oni leader who got his head lopped off, but it flew around anyway. There's Amano Jaku. I told you a story about these demon-like beasties in episode 19, The Heavenly Demon. You have your Yamauba or Yamamba, nasty mountain witches that offer help to lost travelers and then eat them all up. There are things called gozu, literally cowhead, or mezu, horsehead. You'll probably run into those ruffians at the gates of hell. But there's also an ushioni that can be read gyuki too. It means cow oni, but sort of spider-looking with a cow's head. It likes to hang out near water, and it might just kill you with its poisonous breath. Don't forget your gaki, the hungry ghosts, or your kijo, female oni. There are so many more. But you get the idea, so I'm going to stop right here. Now, before I go, I need your help. Uncanny Japan is going to hit its whomping 100th episode early this May. 5.5 years after I sat down on a rocky beach and hit record, I am finally here. Milestone indeed. Looking back, personally, it's been a tempestuous 5.5 years, but the podcast has kept me afloat. It's special. But a podcast is nothing but me talking to a wall with a blanket nailed to it if there are no listeners and supporters of the show. And that is every single one of you. You all are super special. So here's my idea as it squirms nebulously in my brain. For episode 100, I want to hear your stories. Send me any strange, spooky, wonderful, funny, and yes, uncanny experience or episode that you've had about Japan. Anything you're okay with me reading on the show. Then, for episode 100, Soundman Richard and I will take turns reading as many as we can, with a little banter about each one and some sharing of our own encounters. I don't know about Richard, but I have a few. So what do you think? If you're interested, send your stories to uncannyjapan@gmail.com, along with a short bio and the name you'd like me to use when introducing your piece. Depending on the amount of responses I get, I can't guarantee that you'll be read. But if you keep your story tight and well written, your chances improve greatly. Send me your stories. Okay, thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you again real soon. Bye-bye. You've reached the end of the show, and I just want you to know how much we appreciate you listening and supporting us. Any subscribing, reviewing, and gushing to your friends, family, even random strangers really does help keep us going. If you have the means and you want to help a little more and get a little more, we are making extra content over on Patreon, all for only $5 a month. Or if you like to read horror, you might be interested in my Bram Stoker-nominated short story collection, The Carp-Faced Boy and Other Tales. 本当にありがとうございます. Thank you again, and I'll talk to you real soon.